Chapter 1226. The Legend of King Geezer. Zhang Yi was not in a hurry. Since it was Paji Gasang who invited him here, he would tell his purpose. As the group of people toasted each other, they talked about their experiences after the end of the world and the secrets of the snow region. Zhang Yi and Paji Gasang were both brief and did not tell too many secrets. However, even the few words from Paji Gasang about the snow region plateau were enough to make Zhang Yi feel frightened. That mysterious land has never lacked secrets. Yang Xinxin smiled and asked Paji Gasang, "Paji Tusi, there is one thing I am very curious about. It is about the guardian deity of your snowy plateau, the Lord of the Cemetery. I wonder if it is convenient for me to ask you." Paji Gasang hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, "If it is something that does not touch on taboos, you can naturally tell Miss Yang." Yang Xinxin smiled and said, "Then I will ask, please forgive me if it is inconvenient to answer. It is said that the Lord of the Cemetery in the Snowy Plateau has been passed down for thousands of years, and each generation of the Lord of the Cemetery is the reincarnation of the previous generation of the Lord of the Cemetery. And after they awaken, even if they have never learned to read, they can recite the tens of millions of words of the legend of King Geezer. There have been rumors about this matter in the outside world. I have never been to the Snowy Plateau. I don't know if it is true." Hearing Yang Xinxin's question, everyone looked at Paji Gasang. The heavenly singers of the Snowy Plateau have always been a hot topic on the internet, and they also want to know whether it is true or not. Paji Gasang heard the words and nodded seriously. "I can confirm this to you. It is indeed true. And this is also the most effective way for us to confirm the reincarnation of the funeral master." His eyes drifted to the sky, becoming pious and respectful. More than 2,000 years ago, a great man appeared on the snowy land. He was our immortal hero, King Geezer. He saved countless suffering people in the snowy land from the hands of the devil and established a powerful dynasty. The legend of King Geezer is an immortal epic of the Snowy Plateau. Every snowy citizen will sing praises for his great achievements. Zhang Yi heard this and said curiously, "King Geezer is not the first funeral master, but since him, every generation of funeral masters will recite the legend of King Geezer, right?" He felt particularly magical in his heart and looked at Yang Xinxin and others. From the eyes of everyone, Zhang Yi knew that they were all doubting. The legendary hero of the Snowy Plateau, King Geezer, was an alien from more than 2,000 years ago. The so-called reincarnation and the ability of the heaven-given singing poet are a powerful supernatural power. The Snowy Plateau is too mysterious, and many things could not be explained by scientific methods. But after the end of the world, the era of great mutation came, and all kinds of strange and bizarre abilities appeared in the world. If explained by supernatural powers, then the various miracles of the Snowy Plateau make sense. Paji Gasang shook his two mustaches and said with a smile, "That is an epic." Before King Geezer appeared, the Snowy Plateau had been ruled by the Demon Kingdom for a long time. According to the legend of King Geezer, the Demon Kingdom came from a place called the Demon Abyss, which is connected to the terrifying Netherworld. And the people of the Demon Kingdom all came to the world from hell. They ruled the Snowy Plateau and plunged the people of the Snowy Plateau into dire straits. And at this time, King Geezer turned out and led the divine soldiers and generals to wipe out the Demon Kingdom, seal them under the Great Snow Mountain, and never appear again. Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel a little strange after listening to the story told by Paji Gasang. The Demon Kingdom from the Netherworld? Why did he subconsciously connect the Demon Kingdom with the monsters in the abyss of the Fog Valley and the mysterious snake people under the dragon veins of the Qinling Mountains? Did Paji Gasang tell him this intentionally or unintentionally? Paji Gasang continued, "Nowadays, at the beginning of the first month of the plateau calendar every year, we will hold a grand Chuanjiao Dharma assembly to commemorate the great achievements of King Geezer. At that time, there will also be many monks who have attained the Tao to discuss the Dharma." Paji Gasang leaned towards Zhang Yi and said earnestly, "Sir Hundun, as the chieftain of the Snowy Plateau, I can invite distinguished guests to participate in the Chuanjiao Dharma assembly. If you and your relatives and friends are willing to attend the meeting, I am willing to lead the way for you. Zhang Yi simply calculated the time. There are still more than 3 months before the so-called Chuanzhao Dharma assembly. He smiled and nodded. Thank you for the kindness of Chieftain Paji. Let's go back and discuss it. If I want to go, can I contact you again? Zhang Yi just thought that Paji Gesang was being polite and didn't take it to heart. The situation in the southwest region was too complicated, and he didn't want to get involved in the muddy waters of other regions. Paji Gesang smiled slightly and did not continue discussing the issue. Instead, he extended his hand warmly to invite everyone to have a meal. Zhang Yi and the others were not polite. The meal was indeed delicious, and the cooking skills of the Luodan chef were indeed excellent. I don't know what the food was made of, but the meat was particularly delicious. After asking around, Zhang Yi learned that it was yak meat and wild wolf meat, specialties brought from the Tibetan area. Originally, they were some rough foods, but Luodan has a unique cooking method. Paji Gesang smiled and said, in fact, there are more delicious ingredients, but the journey is too long this time, so it is not convenient to bring them here. If you come to Sala City next time, I will definitely let you taste the top snow-covered food. Zhang Yi smiled and said, well, since you said so, I must go next time. The meal was eaten very quickly. Zhang Yi originally thought that Paji Gesang would ask him for something. But he didn't expect that Paji Gesang just chatted with them and introduced some customs and practices of the snowy plateau and didn't mention anything else. After the meal, Zhang Yi still thought that he was overthinking and that he was just trying to get close to him. But when he was about to leave after the meal, Paji Gesang's personal guard, Sualong Deji, who was nearly 2 meters tall and like a black iron tower, came over with a black metal box in his hands. Zhang Yi and his friends looked at the box, not knowing what it was. Paji Gesang smiled at Zhang Yi and said, I have a small gift here, just as a souvenir. I see that you are interested in the culture of the snowy plateau. You can take this and have a look. I guarantee that this is a unique copy, and you can't see it anywhere else. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and used the fingerprint lock to open the iron box, but he didn't expect that there was a wooden box inside. Just a glance, you can tell that the box has been around for a long time, as if it could be blown away by a gust of wind. Paji Gesang carefully opened the wooden box, took out a yellowed sheepskin scroll, and handed it to Zhang Yi solemnly. What is this? Zhang Yi asked curiously. Paji Gesang smiled faintly. This is a fragment of the legend of King Geezer from more than 1,000 years ago. Chapter 1227 Snowland Secrets. The parchment scroll from more than 1,000 years ago was placed in front of Zhang Yi. It was absolutely priceless to be preserved until now. It is not an exaggeration to say that this parchment scroll is a national treasure. It can only be preserved intact in the hands of the 4 chieftains. However, this kind of antique is not of much value now. Antiques in prosperous times, gold in troubled times. After the end of the world, only materials are the most precious. Zhang Yi glanced at Paji Gesang. This powerful figure in the southwest region should not be so stupid as to give something worthless. Since he gave it, there must be other meanings in it. Zhang Yi reached out and took the 1,000-year-old fragment and said, Thank you for your kindness. I will read it carefully. Paji Gesang's smile became even stronger. He diligently sent Zhang Yi and others to the door, and he returned only after everyone left. On the way back, Zhang Yi sat in the car, flipped his right hand, and the parchment scroll appeared in his hand. He was wearing silver-gray gloves on his hands, which were part of the combat uniform. Ordinary sniper rifles were difficult to penetrate, so there was no need to worry about the parchment scroll being poisonous. What is his purpose in giving me this fragment of the King Geezer? Zhang Yi frowned and thought. Inside the RV, the others also looked at the fragment in Zhang Yi's hand. After the end of the world, they accompanied Zhang Yi through a lot, and they were no longer as innocent as they were at the beginning. They would not think that what Paji Gesang did was meaningless. Yang Xinshin said, Wouldn't it be clear if you look at the contents inside? The entire King Geezer has tens of millions of words, and the number of words in this parchment scroll is at most tens of thousands. Paji Gesang must have a special meaning for doing this, and I think the answer may be written in the parchment scroll. Zhang Yi nodded when he heard it. He reached out and carefully opened the parchment scroll. Due to the ability of all things to track their tracks, he was not worried about the situation where the dagger would be revealed. Zhang Yi's movements were very light, because this parchment scroll was very old, and he was afraid that it would be destroyed accidentally. When the parchment scroll was completely opened, Yang Xinxin immediately came over. It was densely packed with heavenly text, but in the middle of the 21st century, the application of AI was already relatively mature. The ancient plateau font was directly translated into Chinese through the database. Zhang Yi looked at it carefully. This fragment tells the story of the legendary demon kingdom in the snowy plateau. It says that the people of the demon kingdom have terrifying appearances, are 10 feet tall, and have 6 eyes on their heads. They can communicate with hell, gain power by sacrificing living people, and often kill the people of the snowy plateau and cook them. There is a huge dark abyss in the capital of the demon kingdom. The king of the demon kingdom throws a large number of slaves into the abyss every once in a while to sacrifice to the devil. The more Zhang Yi looked at it, the more serious his expression became. During the meal, Paji Gesang specifically mentioned this story. And now the ancient epic chapter he gave Zhang Yi is about the demon kingdom coming from underground. Isn't this telling Zhang Yi that there are also existences similar to the Star Island Fog Valley and the Qinling Abyss in the Snowy Plateau? And these mysterious and terrifying underground world creatures are not always lurking underground, but have appeared in the world and have intersected with humans. Such a simple purpose. Even Zhang Yi can quickly see it. Not to mention the clever Yang Xinxin. She stared at Zhang Yi and said lightly, Paji Gesang wants you to go to the snowy plateau. Zhang Yi raised his head suddenly, and suddenly thought of Paji Gesang's invitation to him to attend the Chuanzhao Dharma assembly. In his mind, he thought of the fact that the number 1 and number 2 figures in the southwest region failed to attend the Shengjing gathering. Zhang Yi suddenly understood. It seems that after the end of the world, secret realms like the Qinling underground are emerging one after another. The snowy plateau also has its own problems, so the funeral master and the head of the Yashalangtai family are busy with the problems there. However, after Zhang Yi went through the Qinling underground, he was more awed by those mysterious and unknown worlds. Whether it is the black armored monster or the white dragon, they all have terrifying strength that Zhang Yi can't even dream of. Zhang Yi doesn't want to put himself in danger again. Yang Xinxin saw the resistance on Zhang Yi's face. She looked down at the parchment scroll in Zhang Yi's hand, thought for a moment, and said to Zhang Yi indifferently, Brother Zhang Yi, the so-called demon kingdom may be different from the secret realm we saw before. Yang Xinxin's cold voice was like a clear spring, which brought Zhang Yi back to his senses. What do you think? Yang Xinxin said, Didn't the book say that more than 2,000 years ago, the people of the demon kingdom emerged from hell and ruled that land? It was King Geezer who came out of nowhere and overthrew the rule of the demon kingdom. This shows that the power of the demon kingdom is not that terrible. Because if we calculate backwards in time, Huashu Kingdom was still in the spring and autumn period and the Warring States period at that time. With just such a horizontal comparison, we can basically judge that the power of the demon kingdom is limited. It is far from reaching the level of today's aliens. Zhang Yi nodded and agreed with what Yang Xinxin said. The large-scale appearance of aliens will give birth to powerful individuals, just like raising goo. There was no such phenomenon in the past, so the individual aliens would not be too powerful. But how do you explain the existence of the underground world? This is another new question. He pinched his nose and said slowly, And what is Paji Gesang's purpose? He hopes to ask me to go and help him with something. This favor is most likely related to the so-called demonic forces underground. But if there really is an unknown force, wouldn't it be more effective to ask all the major regions to work together? Yang Xinxin said, Brother, don't forget that your identity is different. In the entire Huashu country, among all the Ypsilon aliens, you are the only one who does not belong to any force. You're just fighting for your own interests, and there are not many involvements behind you. But if it involves other Ypsilons, things will become very troublesome. The situation in the southwest region is complicated, and Paja is only the patriarch of the second largest family. He is trying to win you over. I guess the most likely reason is to seize power. This sentence made the atmosphere in the car become serious. Things like power grabbing are not uncommon after the end of the world. Several regions have experienced this phenomenon. For example, Li Chonggong in the northwest region and Gao Chongkong rebelled in the Jiangnan region. The southwest region is led by the four great chieftains, and no force has formed an absolute rule. Then the struggle for power will probably be more terrifying than in other regions. Zhang Yi leaned back in his chair, frowned slightly, and carefully thought about the logic. After thinking for a long time, he put the parchment in his hand into Yang Xinxin's hand. Xinxin, study the humanities and history of the snowy plateau carefully after you go back. If Paji Gesang really wants to do something with us, he will contact us soon. Zhang Yi said lightly. Chapter 12:28 Burial Master. Zhang Yi is a person who hates trouble. He doesn't want to put himself in a dangerous situation, so although he is very curious about the mysterious snowy plateau, he will not go there easily. The repeated experiences of secret places have made him full of awe for those unknown things. Unless it is a low-risk, high-return thing, he will participate with great interest. So Zhang Yi asked Yang Xinxin to be responsible for studying the humanities and history of the snowy plateau so that he can prepare in advance. However, there is one thing that the snowy plateau does have a huge advantage over other regions. That is, the inheritance of the mystical civilization of the snowy plateau is relatively complete. Although there are many chaotic legends and myths, a lot of useful information can still be obtained by peeling the silk and pulling the cocoon. Most of the historical materials of other regions, especially the mystical part, were burned in some special historical periods. The next day, Zhang Yi was ready to go back to Jiangnan. In the morning, Paji Gesang sent someone to invite Zhang Yi to go alone and wanted to talk about something. Zhang Yi raised his mouth slightly when he heard this, and he knew that this time Paji Gesang was finally going to talk about business. Zhang Yi nodded in agreement, and then followed the maid to Paji Gesang's residence. Paji Gesang dismissed his attendants, leaving only Zhang Yi with him in the house. Solong Deji led a group of trusted guards, carefully guarding all directions of the courtyard, keeping a distance of 20 meters from the house to ensure that no one would approach this place. After Paji Gesang made a few simple polite remarks to Zhang Yi, he looked at him meaningfully and asked, "Mr. Hundun, I wonder if you have read the scripture I gave you?" Zhang Yi nodded. "I have finished reading it." "Chief Paji, I wonder what you think. I don't like to beat around the bush. You'd better speak directly if you have something to say." Paji Gesang smiled deeply. He sat on the sofa, and Zhang Yi sat beside him. "I have a question to ask you first. As one of the few Epsilon-level aliens in Huashu country, can you tell me how many ways there are to become an Epsilon-level alien?" Zhang Yi raised his head and glanced at him when he heard the words. "There are 2 ways I know of. First, those who are born with talent will naturally have Epsilon-level combat power after obtaining enough resources. These people are born Epsilon mutants, and what they lack is training. Second, the top Delta-level mutants break through the restrictions of the gene lock after obtaining substances, such as the Source of God, and then get enough resources to be trained and promoted to Epsilon." Zhang Yi knocked on the armrest of the sofa with his right hand, his eyes drooping. "I have also heard of the 3rd way, that is the funeral master in the southwest region. It is said that he is a natural Epsilon, and soon after the end of the world, he became the strongest person in the southwest region." This is probably what Paja Gesang wanted to say. Zhang Yi heard Deng Shintong say this, but no one knows what the principle is. Maybe after the end of the world, people have experienced too many bizarre things and have long been numb. Paji Gesang nodded. "I didn't expect Mr. Hundun to have such a rich source of intelligence, and he also knows something about the funeral master in our southwest region. But the promotion of the funeral master is more incredible than you can imagine. It can be called a true miracle." Zhang Yi stared at Paji Gesang with burning eyes. "Paji Tussi, just say whatever you want to say. What does this have to do with me?" Paji Gesang took a deep breath. "Sir, please be patient. I believe you will be interested in this matter." With some reminiscence in his eyes, he began to tell Zhang Yi about some of the conditions in the southwest region after the end of the world. As rumored by the outside world, before each generation of the cemetery master passed away, he would leave a will to point out the direction for his reincarnation. Often, less than 10 years after his death, a young man would appear on the snowy plateau, who was born with knowledge and could recite the legend of King Geezer with tens of millions of words. After discovering this reincarnation, it cannot be called the master of the funeral. It must be brought back by the great Lama Tripa of Songjia Temple, and then, after the initiation ceremony, it can be officially granted the identity of the reincarnation master of the funeral. Zhang Yi asked curiously, "Initiation?" Paji Geseng nodded. The Tripa will lead it to the Great Sun Hall of Songjia Temple for the initiation ceremony in the presence of many enlightened monks and the 4 chieftains. Through the rotation of 3,600 prayer wheels, its past divinity will be awakened. Zhang Yi was confused, as he did not know much about religious studies. "Can you be more concise?" "I don't know much about the religious culture of the snowy plateau," Zhang Yi said with a smile. Paji Geseng paused and smiled helplessly. "Okay, then I'll make it short. Since the day when the world was frozen, the snowy plateau ushered in a huge famine, and countless people in the snowy plateau died in the cold wind. As the guardian god of the Tantric Buddhism, the master of the cemetery prayed to the Buddhas in the sky. He wore coarse cloth, was naked, had his hair loose, and walked barefoot along the snowy mountain. He also personally turned the 3,600 prayer wheels of the Songjia Temple, asking the Buddha to bless everyone. When I was young, I received a Western education. Don't be fooled by lore Hundun. Although I am a chieftain of the snowy plateau, I am not devout enough in my heart for religious beliefs." Paji Geseng smiled with some shame. "Although the funeral master's behavior was touching, I didn't believe that any miracle would happen at first. But he changed the subject. His eyes became pious. On the day when he prostrated himself on the mountain road and prayed to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the Great Sun Hall of Songjia Temple, we all witnessed a miracle. His voice was extremely pious, and even his fat face seemed to be filled with a layer of precious light. The Great Snow Mountain, which had been silent for many years, bloomed with brilliant Buddha light at midnight. I saw the clouds rising from Songjia Temple and the funeral master standing in the clouds, like a god or Buddha. He possessed extraordinary power and even waved his hand to disperse the wind and snow in the sky." Zhang Yi was silent, listening to the story told by Paji Geseng. "This is simply hard to believe. It is completely a rumor in strange novels. But Paji Geseng himself said this, and people had to believe it." "You mean that the gods and Buddhas protected him? Or maybe he is a god or Buddha himself, and is he really the master of the cemetery in reincarnation?" Zhang Yi stared at him and asked slowly. Paji Geseng nodded. "Yes. In the past, I didn't believe these, even though I grew up listening to these stories. But now I believe it firmly. And there are such records in the scriptures passed down by our ancestors. When King Geezer, who represents light and justice, returns, the demon kingdom will reappear in the world. The Great Snow Mountain will collapse, the seal of the demon kingdom will loosen, and disasters will invade the world from the abyss. The world will also enter a new reincarnation." Chapter 12:29 Southwest Region Structure. Zhang Yi listened to the legend told by Paji Geseng silently, and on the surface he was calm. It was just a legend. Paji Geseng deliberately exaggerated a mysterious and dangerous atmosphere, but Zhang Yi didn't buy it. Seeing this, Paji Geseng took a deep breath and stuffed his fat body back into the chair. "Do you think these things are absurd?" Zhang Yi nodded a little bit. Paji Geseng sighed, looked up at the ceiling, and said slowly, "If it were in the past, I would think so. But now the many changes in this world have changed my view." He looked at Zhang Yi with deep eyes. "Sir Hundun, you are one of the few people in Huashu country who has been to the Star Island above the ocean and deep under the Qinling Mountains. You have a deeper experience of the mysterious underground world than most people. Don't you want to know what the mysterious world under the earth is?" Zhang Yi took a serious look at Paji Geseng. I don't know, do you know? Podji Gesang's mustache curled up, with a hint of cunning on his expression. I have the information you want in my hands. The snowy plateau still preserves the epic text of King Gizer's era. It's in my Podji family, the only one. This is the most comprehensive information about the underground world in the entire Huashu kingdom from ancient times to the present. The ancestors of the Podji family were once historians of the great dynasty established by King Gizer. Their ancestors started as historians and gradually grew stronger. Since the cultural heritage of the Snowy Plateau was in the hands of the nobles, the common people were not qualified to know the characters at all, and even had no surnames. They could only exist as serfs of the nobles. Therefore, the position of historian has been passed down for thousands of years and has a lofty status. So much so that later, after generations of accumulation, the Podji family became one of the 4 noble chieftain families in the Snowy Plateau. Zhang Yi's eyes condensed. This time, only their 4 regions participated in the underground operation in the Qinling Mountains. The details of the mission were absolutely not disclosed to the outside world. The East China Sea region and the Southwest region did not participate in the mission, and it was impossible for them to know their experiences in the underground world. However, Podji Gesang said it accurately. Could it be that he really knew something unknown? The Snowy Plateau is a mysterious land. Throughout the history of the Huashu civilization, it was ruled by people of other civilizations for quite a long time. Therefore, it retains a unique civilization and cultural heritage. Even the fires that burned civilizations in history failed to completely burn the culture of the Snowy Plateau. Zhang Yi's eyes were solemn. Podji Gesang said what he feared the most. The black-armored alien in the fog valley of Qingdao, the human-headed snake body under the Qinling Mountains, and the white dragon who could transform into a human form. Those powerful beings made him deeply afraid. What's more, he had taken precious things from these beings. The source of the gods of Qingdao and the purple crystals under the abyss of the Qinling Mountains. To this day, the warning of the Dragon King before his death still echoes in Zhang Yi's mind from time to time. He hates this feeling of the unknown. Only by understanding the source of those mysterious existences can he find a way to deal with it. Chief Podji, the stories you told are very interesting. I am indeed a little interested. But what do you want me to do? You know, in this world, people have to pay an equal or even excessive price in exchange for what they want. Zhang Yi bluntly expressed his thoughts. The smile on Chief Podji's face became even stronger. He was not afraid of Zhang Yi's negotiation, but was afraid that Zhang Yi was not interested in what he said. In fact, compared with Zhang Yi, Chief Podji's heart was more urgent. Because looking at the entire Huashu kingdom, perhaps only Zhang Yi could help him. Chief Podji said, 3 months later, the annual Chuanzhao Dharma Assembly will be held at the Songjia Temple in Sala City. At the same time, that is also the day when our 4 chieftain families join forces to open the door to the Demon Kingdom sealed under the Great Snow Mountain. I hope that by then, you can help me seize the treasure under the Great Snow Mountain. Zhang Yi drooped his eyelids. The gate of the Demon Kingdom? Treasure? This sounds a bit nonsensical. If I hadn't heard this now, I would have thought you were possessed. Podji Gesang laughed and then sighed. You're right. Who would believe such an absurd myth? But now it has come true. The ballads of King Gizer have been circulating on the Snowy Plateau. Every generation of heaven-given singers will awaken their memories and sing this ancient story. Therefore, no one can hide the truth of history. The existence of the Demon Kingdom is engraved in the minds of every Snowland citizen. They believe it without a doubt, and they all know that King Gizer once destroyed the Demon Kingdom and suppressed its demon cave in the Great Snow Mountain. Therefore, the Great Snow Mountain is not only a holy mountain for the Snowland people to worship, but also a demon cave full of danger and fear. The Demon Kingdom under the Great Snow Mountain is the same as the Qinling Mountains. The abyss under the sky, or something similar to the abyss in the fog valley of Qingdao. Podji Gesang said with great confidence. Ever since that night, when I saw the Buddha's light descending from the Great Snow Mountain on the body of the buried master, I knew that there must be something extraordinary hidden underneath. And the 4 chieftain families of ours hold the map to the Demon Kingdom. And next year's Chuanzhao Dharma Assembly, he narrowed his eyes and lowered his voice to say to Zhang Yi, our 4 chieftains have agreed to merge the maps in their hands. Then go to the Demon Kingdom together to find the substance that can give people powerful power. Oh, yes, that probably includes the source of God that you have found, as well as some other beautiful things. Zhang Yi looked at Paji Gesang and stared at him for more than 10 seconds. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes, with undisguised doubt in his eyes. If there is really such a good thing, why would you look for me? I am an outsider. Aren't you afraid that I will take away your opportunity? There is no such thing as a free lunch. During the trip to Shengjing, Zhang Yi experienced a major crisis under the Qinling Mountains. If it weren't for the most critical moment, Bai Longzi didn't kill them for some reason. Now it's hard to say whether Zhang Yi and the other 4 can come back alive. Therefore, Zhang Yi will not be easily moved by others. Paji Gesang pondered for a long time before saying, we 4 chieftains once agreed that the matter on the snowy plateau can only be resolved internally. We will never let outsiders get involved. But now, it has come to a critical moment of life and death, and I can't care so much. Chapter 1230. Driving the Tiger to Devour the Wolf. Paji Gesang knew that Zhang Yi was a man who would not release his eagle until he saw the rabbit. No one dared to easily deceive an Ypsilon. So, he told Zhang Yi about the current situation of the snowy plateau here. At the beginning of the end of the world, the 4 major families were headed by the Paji family. The Paji family had the greatest power, the most private soldiers, and the most extensive influence among the people of the snowy region. But all this changed after a funeral master was born in the Yashalangtai family. The current funeral master came from a branch of the Yashalangtai family. After being guided by the Buddha's light of the holy mountain, he became a powerful existence in the realm of Ypsilon. This transcendent power instantly made the entire snowy plateau, including the alien groups that were still fighting each other in the Sichuan and Chongqing regions, bow their heads. According to the timeline, when the funeral master was promoted to Ypsilon, Zhang Yi was still in Yunk Manor, fighting wits and courage with the people of the West Mountain Base. So the funeral master at that time, with his absolute overwhelming strength, made the Yashalangtai family the uncrowned king of the entire southwest region. If one family dominates, the balance will be broken. The Yashalangtai family quickly seized power, and the patriarch of the Yashalangtai family, Deji, also stole the position of the Sangha temple tribe. The snowy plateau is a combination of politics and religion, and the Sangha temple tribe represents the religious leader of the Tantric Buddhism. Today, the Yashalangtai family holds absolute power and can even issue orders in the name of gods and Buddhas. Paji Gesang said solemnly, to use an old saying of the Han people, the ambition of the Yashalangtai family is already Sima Zhao's heart, and passers-by know it. In the past 2 years, the power of our other 3 families has been rapidly eroded. It is only a matter of time before we are eliminated. If they get the treasure of the Demon Kingdom under the Great Snow Mountain, we will be completely finished. So this time I came here, although they deliberately sent me away, I was also looking for opportunities to contact powerful allies. Zhang Yi nodded after listening to Paji Gesang's explanation. It is true that where there are people, there is struggle. I have a few questions to ask you,
Zhang Yi said lightly.
Paji Gesang said quickly. Please go ahead. Zhang Yi said, first, if the Yashalangtai family really has Ypsilon, then destroying you is just a matter of convenience. As far as I know, due to the special nature of the southwest region, you do not have the right to launch the god of death of love. Then that Ypsilon is invincible. But why do you still exist? Paji Gesang sighed deeply. It's a long story. Although the funeral master belongs to the Yashalangtai family, all the previous funeral masters have the purest hearts and the most pious Buddha nature. They will not kill innocent people indiscriminately, but the guardian gods of the people of the snow region. So, unless Deji finds a suitable reason, he will not be able to convince the funeral master to destroy our 3 families. However, because the funeral master is too simple, sooner or later, he may be bewitched by Deji. Lord Chaos, You don't know that we are walking on thin ice every day, fearing that when we wake up the next day, we will be attacked by the army of the Yashalangtai family. This made Zhang Yi very curious. Pure people?
How pure can it be?
Second question. Why choose me? Zhang Yi asked his biggest doubt. If you just want to seek help from the outside world, then there is no doubt that Qinling district is the best choice. With their strength, they can easily suppress the southwest district. Pajajesang smiled and shook his head. If it is a last resort, then it may be my choice. He pointed outside. You see, I brought a lot of followers with me this time. My caravan is very large, not that I intend to show off my wealth. Zhang Yi's eyes flashed with a glimmer of understanding. Do you want to come here for refuge? Pajajesang nodded helplessly. I do have such an idea. I need to transfer some of my property in advance. If I really can't stay in the snowy plateau, I will apply for the protection of Qinling. But I won't let Qinling district participate in the struggle in the southwest district. Because once this behemoth joins the struggle in the southwest district, it will completely destroy our 1,000-year foundation. Zhang Yi certainly understands this. Qinling district is still the nominal big brother of Huaxi state. If they discover the secret of the Great Snow Mountain, they will definitely intervene. After all, Qinling has gained enough benefits in the Qinling Mountains, and they know what it means to discover an underground secret realm. At that time, Qinling will directly take over the Great Snow Mountain. Even if the forces in the southwest region will have a share, they can only have a small share. After all, everything underground belongs to the entire Huaxi kingdom, and the 4 chieftains have no right to occupy it. It is a great blessing to leave them a small share. Paji Gesang said, the same is true for seeking help from other regions. There will be too many troubles if there is a collision between regions, and the consequences are difficult to control, he said, looking at Zhang Yi with burning eyes. But Your Excellency is different. Although Your Excellency is a member of the Jiangnan region, I know that you are not affiliated with the headquarters of the Jiangnan region. You are an independent individual, like a mercenary. Then you come to help me in the name of a free man. You can minimize the impact. This was what Paji Gesang had in mind. Zhang Yi also understood. No wonder Paji Gesang was particularly eager to treat him after coming to Qinling. Especially when he looked at him, it was as if he had discovered a treasure. Zhang Yi smiled. Are you so sure? Maybe I will take everything away and leave you empty-handed. Paji Gesang smiled confidently. You don't want power, land, or people. I have investigated your information, and I know this very well. As long as it's not these, I don't care. Even if you take away the treasure under the Great Snow Mountain, I won't lose much. I can't get it, but just don't let the Yashalangtai family get it. Paji Gesang is not ignorant of the principle of letting the wolf into the house. But right now, there is a tiger lurking in his home, and he has no choice. Either leave the southwest region and become a homeless dog, or find a powerful helper and give it a try. Even if he fails, the worst result is no worse than now. Zhang Yi lowered his head in thought. He was indeed a little tempted. If there really is a secret realm similar to Qinling Mountains and Fog Valley under the Great Snow Mountain, it would definitely be a huge treasure house for him. What's more, if King Geezer was able to suppress the power of the Demon Kingdom more than 2,000 years ago, it might mean that the danger level of this secret realm is far less than that of Qinling Mountains and Fog Valley. Chapter 1230, One Pull. Pajajesang's words were very tempting, but Zhang Yi was not a fool after all. He had experienced many crises after the end of the world, and he was able to turn danger into safety every time because he was stable enough. You want me to help you with nothing? Isn't it too simple? Zhang Yi glanced at Pajajesang with a meaningful look.
If you
want me to help, you must show some real benefits. Pajajesang heard this and gritted his teeth and said, after the matter is done, we can split the benefits 50-50. Zhang Yi laughed. It's hard to say whether the things you said under the snow-capped mountains exist or not, and what they are. Pajajesang was speechless. But there is nothing I can show you now that you can look up to. Whether it is the resources needed for life or weapons and equipment, What Zhang Yi has in his hands is no longer sufficient, but surplus. Otherwise, how could he generously take out a half-finished Yuanshi or Vane to invest in Deng's Technology's genetic project? There are too few people in Tianhai City, and most of them are ordinary people who don't need too many resources at all. Zhang Yi raised his lips slightly and said calmly, "You still have something very valuable to me?" Paji Gasang's eyes widened, and then he smiled helplessly. "Are you talking about the main text of the Epic of King Geezer?" The Epic of King Geezer has been sung by every generation of divinely gifted poets, but their versions are different. In addition, its stories and legends have mythological elements, so it is difficult to say whether it is true or false, and how much it is credible. However, the only copy preserved in the Paji family was recorded by the historian of that year. Even if there are some spring and autumn writing styles, it is still the most credible. Zhang Yi knew that if he wanted to find out what the creatures in the underground world are, he had to trace them back from ancient culture. Paji Gasang took a deep breath again. He was too fat, so whenever he was emotional, he had to take a few deep breaths to calm down. "I can give you another copy, but you must promise to represent our Paji family to participate in the Chuanzhao Dharma Assembly next year," Paji Gasang said seriously. Zhang Yi rubbed the back of his hand and said calmly, "Then let me finish reading it first. If I think it is worth it, it is not impossible to consider it." It is not Zhang Yi who is anxious now, but Paji Gasang. Now that Zhang Yi has learned about the Great Snow Mountain, even if Paji Gasang turns against him, Zhang Yi can still go to the Great Snow Mountain by himself. With his time and space ability, it only takes him a few dozen minutes to go from the distant Tianhai City to the snowy plateau. Paji Gasang's face became a little ugly, but at this time, he really needs help from others. If he is not forced, how can he ask for help from outsiders? After thinking about it, he can only compromise with Zhang Yi. Not long after, he took another parchment scroll from the back. However, this parchment scroll is obviously thicker and contains more content to show sincerity. Zhang Yi took it in his hand. Although the parchment scroll was yellowed, it felt quite delicate. As he unfolded the parchment scroll, he exclaimed, "You had such a good technology to make parchment scrolls thousands of years ago, which is really great. You are worthy of being a professional historian." Paji Gasang smiled strangely. "It is very troublesome to process parchment. How can there be so much parchment paper to use? There are obviously better materials." Zhang Yi looked at Paji Gasang in surprise, and the next moment, his hands became a little stiff. "This is not parchment paper, it is clearly human skin." Thinking of some rumors about the ancient snowy plateau, Zhang Yi did not say much and calmly stretched out his hand to unfold the parchment scroll. After the portable intelligence system translated, Zhang Yi also understood the contents recorded in the scroll. After the hero King Geezer suppressed the demon kingdom, he established a great dynasty on the snowy plateau. He ordered the historian to record his great deeds and sing them to future generations. Remind people not to forget that although the demon kingdom was destroyed, the abyss did not disappear. When the world comes to an end, the abyss of the demon world will open and the endless demons will reappear in the world. At that time, King Geezer will return again and lead people to stop this disaster. Zhang Yi was getting more and more frightened. According to the legend of King Geezer, more than 2,000 years ago, the hero King Geezer predicted the coming of the end of the world. And everything that happened today is not accidental, but inevitable. Zhang Yi felt a little cold on his back, but he soon woke up. There are countless such doomsday statements from ancient times to the present, and all the statements are inconsistent. Moreover, the legend of King Geezer did not clearly state the time node of the end of the world. If we infer according to the current situation, it will feel a bit forced. Although he thought so in his heart, Zhang Yi was still frightened. He finished reading the contents of the book, and the intelligence system has scanned it once, and he can watch it at any time later. Chapter 1232. Escape is shameful but useful. Fatty Su had not responded to Li Yangyang's feelings. Everyone could understand that. After all, if this happened to anyone, it would be difficult for them to accept it for a while. However, the time was up, and Zhang Yi did not intend to wait for him, so he asked everyone to pack up and prepare to leave. The next day, Zhang Yi and others left the courtyard. When they walked out of the gate, Zhang Yi vaguely noticed that there was a pair of eyes staring at them from a distance. Not only did he see it, but Liang Yu and Huahua also noticed it. Zhang Yi turned his head and saw Liang Yang holding the pillar with one hand under the attic in the distance, looking here with complicated eyes. He turned back and patted Fatty Su's shoulder and nodded in that direction. Fatty Su has been absent-minded recently. His head is messy, like a chicken coop, and his beard has not been taken care of for several days. He was awakened by Zhang Yi and looked over there. Just by looking at it, he immediately lowered his head like a frightened ostrich, pretending not to see it. Zhang Yi rolled his eyes. After all, she has a good relationship with you and saved your life in the Qinling abyss. Isn't it not good to do this? Fatty Su muttered. I know. But now I don't know what expression I should use to face her. Zhang Yi was speechless. So you choose to escape? Escape is shameful, but it is useful. Fatty Su argued. Zhang Yi shrugged and agreed with what Fatty Su said. Those who encourage others to be brave and face emergencies are all social leaders or outsiders. It is difficult for people in the situation to face everything with a calm mind. Sometimes escape is also a good way. Liang Yu rarely expresses her opinions on other people's private affairs. But this time, she rarely said to Fatty Su, no matter what your final choice is, I think you should at least give her a sincere answer. I know everything. Fatty Su lowered his head and deliberately walked on the other side of the road so that other people could cover his body. I'll have a good talk with her after a while. He didn't have the courage to say it in person. Perhaps after returning to Tianhai City, he would be able to say that sentence through the most familiar electronic device. Zhang Yi said jokingly, if those two words didn't tremble, you wouldn't find that you were uncomfortable, right? Fatty Su's face was about to turn liver-colored. Boss, don't say it. Okay, whatever you want. Zhang Yi waved his hand nonchalantly. Before leaving, Qin Shigong and others came to see him off in person. Now they are paying more and more attention to Zhang Yi. Respect needs to be exchanged for strength, and the strength Zhang Yi showed in Qinling Mountains vaguely surpassed Li Changgong and Han Shanzhua. This is enough to make people respect him. After sending you thousands of miles, you must say goodbye. Please go back after sending you here. After returning, I will discuss with the leaders of the Jiangnan region and send people to Qinling Mountains soon. Zhang Yi said to Qin Shigong and Shang Dawen before boarding the plane. Qin Shigong smiled and nodded. There's no rush for this. It's not long since the last centipede expedition, so we don't dare to rashly mine the Yuanshi veins. We will send teams one after another to survey the surrounding environment first. We will mine after ensuring there is no danger. Zhang Yi nodded. That's right. We'll discuss it then. The Yuanshi veins under the Qinling Mountains are very large, and the energy contained is unimaginable. Shengjing District can't do anything about it. What's more, this time, Zhang Yi has already dug up a considerable amount of Yuanshi veins, which have accumulated into dozens of tall mountains in his space. So, he is not in a hurry for the time being. After saying goodbye to everyone in Shengjing, Zhang Yi and his team got on the plane. The cigar-shaped F-37 flew out of the indoor airport, rushed into the thick clouds, and then flew all the way to the south. Fatty Su sat at the window, holding his chin with one hand, his eyes full of entanglement and melancholy. A waitress came over and asked with concern, Mr. Su, are you feeling unwell? Fatty Su suddenly covered his face with his hands, lowered his head and said, It's okay. I'm just a little sad. Zhang Yi was watching from behind with a frown on his face. You said all my lines. Zhou Kuer and Yang Xinxin beside him couldn't help but burst out laughing. Shengjing City became smaller and smaller in their eyes until it was barely visible. On the huge and empty land of Shengjing City, Liang Yang raised her head, looked at the plane gradually going away, and lowered her head silently. Is it still hard to accept? She pressed down the brim of her hat, then turned and walked away, with falling snow falling on her shoulders and hat, a piece of white. Zhang Yi and the others returned to Blizzard City first. The mission was successfully completed, so it was natural to report to Zhu Zheng first. This was out of respect for him. The news of the completion of the mission had long been conveyed to Zhu Zheng by Deng Shintong, so Zhu Zheng was particularly excited. After everyone got off the plane, they were warmly greeted by the delegation headed by Zhu Zheng. As soon as the cabin door opened and Zhang Yi got off the plane, Zhu Zheng walked over in 2 steps and held Zhang Yi's hand tightly. "Chaos, haha, my Captain Chaos. You are really a treasure of our Jiangnan district. I didn't expect this matter to be completed so perfectly, and it was settled in less than a month. You are all great contributors to the Jiangnan district." Behind Zhu Zheng followed Zhu Yu, Bailey Chongqing, Wu Di, and others, many of whom were old acquaintances of Zhang Yi. Zhu Zheng brought them here specifically, and his purpose was also to play the emotional card with Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi smiled secretly in his heart. Zhu Zheng must have a channel to know that Zhang Yi controls 30% of the Yuanshi veins. I'm afraid he'll be thick-skinned and ask Zhang Yi for more later. Zhang Yi casually said a few polite words, and when he looked carefully at the group of people who came to receive him, he found that there were many more familiar faces. In addition to the aliens originally in Blizzard City, there are also many members of the Superpower Federation when the Moon of Corrosion invaded the Jiangnan region. These aliens, who are scattered all over the place and are responsible for maintaining local order, have grown tremendously 2 years after the end of the world. Perhaps some of them have fallen, and new aliens have occupied their territories. But no one who has survived to this day is a simple character. Among the people who gathered at the first Superpower Federation, at least 50% joined Blizzard City. Blizzard City is getting bigger and bigger now, which is cause for celebration. Zhang Yi said to Zhu Zheng with a smile. Zhu Zheng sighed lightly. Jiangnan is too big, and there are too many troubles. The manpower we need is never enough, so we must keep replenishing it. Chapter 1233, Dividing the Yuan Mine. It's not easy to be a family in Jiangnan District. Zhang Yi naturally knew this. Jiangnan District is too big, Tianhai City is close to the sea, and because of Yuan Kongya's conspiracy, most of the survivors in Tianhai City were killed. So now, Tianhai City is dwindling, the power structure has stabilized, and there are not many conflicts. But this situation is not the same in other places. The survivors of a medium-sized city can reach hundreds of thousands. In addition, in rural areas with relatively sufficient food resources, the survivors scattered all over the place do not obey the constraints of Jiangnan District. So gangs and factions are formed everywhere, and small forces are scattered all over the place, countless. In the cities around Tianhai City, there are no less than 20 organizations of all sizes. It's just because they know Zhang Yi is in Tianhai City, so no one dares to approach the sphere of influence of Tianhai City. Where there are people, there are fights. For food, heating energy, and clothing, it is normal for large and small forces to fight each other. In addition, some animals have mutated and become fierce beasts that bring disaster to one side. These are mainly wild beasts in some mountains and rivers. There are also vicious dogs and mutated cat demons in remote mountain villages. As the commander of the Jiangnan region, Zhu Zheng's desk is full of reports from various regions every day, and he needs to assign people to handle them. The position of the top leader in this region seems to be glorious, but it is indeed very stressful and not so easy to be. What you need now is an Ypsilon who obeys your orders, Zhang Yi said to Zhu Zheng with a smile, and then glanced at Zhu Yu, who was not far behind him. How is your goddaughter recently? Has her strength improved? Zhu Zheng said, her body has now developed to the level of an adult, and she has been trained in combat. She is still one step away from the Ypsilon realm. His eyes were slightly regretful, but that step can't be taken. Zhang Yi said lightly, after all, she is not Yuan Kongya. Zhu Yu's gene is only half of Yuan Kongya's, so her upper limit is not as good as Yuan Kongya. If you want to break through, so far there is only one way to use the source of God. But Zhang Yi will certainly not help her. If he has any good things, he will only give priority to the people around him. Zhu Zheng knew Zhang Yi's character well, so he didn't ask Zhang Yi for help. Instead, he smiled and said, let's not talk about this. You have successfully completed your mission this time. You must stay today, and have a drink with me. Then tell me in detail about your experience in Shengjing." A group of people enthusiastically invited Zhang Yi and his friends back. The banquet was very grand. Zhang Yi took out a cup of hot tea from his arm slowly, but did not choose to drink. Zhu Zheng and his friends had long been accustomed to Zhang Yi's caution, so they did not show any displeasure. However, the people sitting at their banquet were all important people. Zhu Zheng, Deng Yuanbua, Deng Shintong, and a combat chief Tu Yunlai. On Zhang Yi's side, only he and Yang Xinxin were seated. After drinking and exchanging cups, he complimented Zhang Yi and his friends on their hard work and then asked about their experience in Shengjing. Zhang Yi glanced at Deng Shintong and told them briefly. Of course, he naturally omitted the things that should not be said. For example, the powerful and mysterious snake people civilization encountered under the abyss. Even Deng Shintong Zhang Yi didn't tell this matter. Only the people around him knew about it. But even so, Zhu Zheng and the others couldn't help sighing. Zhu Zheng said, "I didn't expect that there would be such a danger under the Qinling mountains. If one day, my Jiangnan district also encounters such a monster, what should I do?" He sighed, his eyes full of worry. Deng Yuanbo laughed and looked at Zhang Yi and said, "Fortunately, we have Captain Chaos here." Zhang Yi smiled slightly and didn't comment. Risks and opportunities coexist. The appearance of a secret realm in the Jiangnan district is not necessarily a bad thing. If it can be handled well, the Jiangnan district may leap up and become a top force. Zhu Zheng laughed. That's right. If Shengjing hadn't obtained the source of God and the Yuan mine from under the Qinling mountains, how could it have become the leader of the 6 districts of Huashu country? When mentioning the Yuan mine, Zhang Yi just smiled slightly and didn't answer. Zhu Zheng ended the topic at the right time. Halfway through the meal, Zhu Zheng said that he couldn't hold his liquor and left the table. But he asked Zhang Yi to leave with him. At this time, it's time to get down to business. The 2 real powerful figures in Jiangnan district are now discussing topics that no one else is qualified to listen to. Zhang Yi and Zhu Zheng came to the lounge at the back. After they sat down, the waitress poured hot tea and then left respectfully. The huge door was closed tightly. The sound insulation here is very good. Once the door is closed, it seems to be completely separated from the outside world. Without outsiders, Zhu Zheng's expression immediately became serious and earnest. He stared at Zhang Yi and asked, "Zhang Yi, about the Yuan mine, did Qin Qigong say when we should send people to mine it?" Zhang Yi's hand was tapping lightly on the coffee table. "We have to wait for a while. After all that, the battle was too brutal, and there are still centipedes underground that have not been cleared away. Mining also needs to ensure safety, don't you think?" Zhu Zheng nodded. "That's true." His expression seemed a little regretful. After all, he had longed for that magical new resource. Zhu Zheng picked up the teacup and took a sip of hot tea. "Zhang Yi, I heard that you performed outstandingly this time and got more than 10% of the yuanshi or vein. Is that right?" Zhang Yi said lightly, "That's right." He raised 3 fingers to Zhu Zheng. "I got a full 30%. Zhu Zheng's eyes suddenly burst into eager light, just like a greedy landlord who discovered the treasure of a giant dragon, and his body leaned towards Zhang Yi. 30%. A full 30% of the yuan, or this overwhelming wealth, finally fell into the hands of... He paused, changed his words, and said, "The pride of my Jiangnan region." Zhang Yi smiled but said nothing. Zhu Zheng had a flattering smile on his face. He rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "Zhang Yi, you can't use up such a huge amount of resources. Can I exchange materials with you?" Zhang Yi had thought about all this a long time ago.
He was just waiting for Zhu Zheng to speak.
"We don't lack basic materials. But you can exchange weapons with me for yuanshi. Although Lu Qian can make weapons, forging weapons by herself will eventually consume her physical strength and supernatural powers. Therefore, Lu Qian is more suitable for making sophisticated weapons, but is not good at producing large-scale standard weapons. And this is not a problem at all for Blizzard City, which has an arsenal." Chapter 1230, 4. Everyone's Code Name. Zhang Yi dipped his finger in the tea and wrote 7 on the coffee table. According to the agreement, I should give you half of the share, that is 5%. Now I increase it to 7%. This extra 2% is enough to greatly improve your productivity. The content of a yuanshi vein under the Qinling Mountains is huge. Even if it is only 2%, it is enough to support the operation of the entire Blizzard City for decades. And all that is needed are some thermal weapons made of basic materials. Zhu Zheng was very happy. Arms are indeed not of much value to them. Only Zhang Yi, in order to deal with aliens like Li Changgong, needs a large number of weapons to perform the extremely consuming skill, Lord of War. So he needs a large number of weapons. The two hit it off, and there was no problem with this deal. But Zhu Zheng was not satisfied. People always take advantage of others, and Zhu Zheng rubbed his hands. It's really good to give you 2% more, but you have more than 20% of the yuanshi or in your hand. You can't use it all, right? How about we exchange more things? Zhang Yi smiled deeply and said to Zhu Zheng, don't be greedy. Our business is not a one-time deal. If you have good things in the future, we can continue to trade. And those yuanshi ores are indeed useful to me. Zhang Yi didn't say it firmly. He also promised to give Deng's technology 5%, plus 7% to Zhu Zheng. He still has 18% of the yuanshi or vein share. As Zhu Zheng said, Zhang Yi couldn't use up all this energy, even if he installed central air conditioning in the entire Tianhai city. But Zhang Yi is used to hoarding supplies for emergencies. Moreover, the mecha that Liu Karen wants to build also requires a lot of energy. Zhu Zheng tried hard, but Zhang Yi just wouldn't give in, so he had no choice but to nod and agree. Afterwards, Zhang Yi reminded Zhu Zheng to remember to prepare some manpower. When they go to the Qinling Mountains to mine, they will need to provide their own personnel. Zhu Zheng nodded. This is easy to do. Blizzard City still has no shortage of manpower. But what about you in Tianhai City? Zhang Yi said, we can just transfer a few people over there, but we can't afford to send miners. Let's do it here. Well, I'll take care of this matter. After talking about these things with Zhu Zheng, Zhang Yi didn't plan to stay in Blizzard City for long. At this time, he was eager to go back because in his different space, there was something he cared about the most. That was the purple crystal obtained from the Purple Pyramid in the mysterious world. As for the Deng family, Zhang Yi didn't go over to say hello, but he reached a consensus with Deng Yuanbo in private. After the yuanshi or vein was delivered, Zhang Yi used the power of space to secretly send them apart. Zhang Yi and Zhu Zheng came out of the lounge at the back. They saw that Fatty Su was not sitting at the dining table, but found a secluded corner, silently watching the falling snow outside the window. From time to time, he sighed and chanted something in his mouth. Since ancient times, love has been empty and hateful, and this hatred is endless. During this period, Lan Xinqing also signaled him whether he wanted to go to the second floor to rest first. Recently, Blizzard City has trained some new girls and formed the Blizzard City Song and Dance Troupe, which can perform for Fatty Su. But Fatty Su shook his head silently and refused. This made Lan Xinqing surprised, wondering how this fat man changed his nature. Zhang Yi knew that he still couldn't forget Li Yangyang in his heart, but the emotional problem could only be solved with time, and others couldn't intervene. After finishing the meal, Zhang Yi said he wanted to go back. Zhu Zheng brought people over and said to Zhang Yi, since we are here, let's deal with something by the way. It turned out that many people around Zhang Yi participated in the battle in this formal battle. However, Liang Yu and others did not have a formal official code name, which was not conducive to future actions. So Zhu Zheng planned to register them formally and give them the code name of the Huaxi military. This can be regarded as an organization. Zhang Yi said humorously. He called Liang Yu and a few others, mainly combat personnel, who needed formal code names. As for Yang Xinxin and the others, they were all hiding in the shadow space of Jingwei and did not directly participate in the battle, so they were not eager for the so-called code names. There are still a large number of code names to choose from in the database. After everyone selected, they finally confirmed their own code names. Su Chunlei, code name Marshal Tianpeng, is indeed as his name suggests. When confirming this code name, Fatty Sue still had a confused look on his face, muttering something in his mouth. Since ancient times, love has been empty and hateful, and this hate is endless. Everyone wanted to laugh when they saw it. Yu Jiguang, code name Luwu, a mythical beast as strong as a tiger in ancient mythology. Liang Yu, code name Nine Heavens, mysterious woman, a female warrior and female war god in ancient mythology. Even Huahua, because of her special performance on the battlefield, has attracted the attention of several major war zones. It got its own myth code name, Xiongqi. Zhang Yi lifted it up and rubbed its head with a smile. The four evil spirits in ancient mythology are Chaos, Taotai, Qiongqi, and Taowu. Qiongqi and Hundan are both among the four evils, so the codenames of one man and one cat seem very suitable. The name of Taotai belongs to Lu Huang, the captain of the demon team. Only Taowu, this code name has not been used yet. The combatants all have their own code names, and they will be officially registered personnel in the future. Afterwards, Zhang Yi took his people and declined Zhu Zheng and others' retention, and left Blizzard City and returned to Tianhai City. Soon, Zhang Yi and his team returned to Tianhai City. This time they were away for a short time, but everyone was very happy. After all, although this mission was a bit risky, it was not very big. The combatants had gone through some training and gained something, while the non-combatants enjoyed the beautiful scenery of the north and were in a good mood. Back to the shelter, the snow outside the door was more than 1 meter deep because no one cleaned it. Fatty Sue walked over and used his ability of snow blowing to blow away the thick snow around the shelter, revealing a huge square in front of the door. Zhang Yi got out of the car and walked over to open the door using the triple insurance of iris, fingerprint, and password. As soon as everyone entered the house, they excitedly threw their heavy coats on the ground, and then fell on the sofa and thick blankets.
Wow.
Finally back. After going out for a walk, it feels good to be home. Comfortable. This sofa is really comfortable. Zhang Yi went back to the room and changed into casual clothes, then came to the living room and sat leisurely on the sofa to watch TV. There are naturally no new TV programs, but the electronic system stores a large number of past programs, which can be watched. To be honest, I will never watch the same program twice in my life. But Zhang Yi prefers to watch some classic movies and TV series. Every time I watch them again, they have a different taste. Everyone fell on the sofa in a mess, and Zhang Yi went over to pour himself a cup of coffee and milk tea. Sitting in front of the huge French window, there was a whistling north wind and falling snow outside. The room was warm and cozy, and the fireplace on the wall was burning with charcoal. Family and friends gathered together, enjoying the leisure and warmth of the moment. This feeling is simply too happy. Chapter 1235. Raising Centipedes. Zhang Yi and his companions returned home and did nothing. They just rested leisurely for a day. On the second day, Zhang Yi began to distribute the results of the Qinling trip. The first thing he had to do was, of course, to explore the composition of the purple crystal brought back by the big dragon cat. Its importance is self-evident, but Zhang Yi took it out and looked at it carefully, but he could not feel any strangeness. It was as if this was a piece of crystal without any characteristics. If it was placed in a craft store, it could be sold for 1 or 200 yuan. Zhang Yi had to give it to Lu Kuoran and ask Lu Kuoran to help study what it was. Lu Kuoran took the purple crystal and looked at it for a long time, but couldn't figure it out. So she began to activate her ability of divine machine control and carefully feel its internal structure. She closed her eyes, and in just a moment, her body trembled violently. Then 2 lines of clear tears flowed from both sides of her closed eyes, dripping on the ground. Zhang Yi was very surprised, but he didn't dare to speak, for fear of disturbing her. After a while, Lu Karen slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were a little blurry, as if she had just seen something like a dream. Zhang Yi then asked carefully, "Karen, what's wrong with you?
What did you find?"
Lu Karen's eyes slowly returned to normal, but she still felt confused. She shook her head. "I don't know either, but I felt an extremely complex emotion. The joys, sorrows, anger, and happiness of the world seemed to be integrated into this strange crystal." Zhang Yi was completely speechless. Emotions? Could it be that this is a memory crystal used to collect people's emotions? Lu Karen wiped her tears and said seriously, in addition to these, I also felt that it contains extremely powerful and precise power. Zhang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. I said that the treasure that Qinling district tried so hard to get would definitely not be that simple. Lu Karen shook the purple crystal in her hand. It was very large, as long as an arm, and not light in weight. Brother, this outer layer is a container. It should be something that carries the internal energy. Only after opening it can you get the power inside. Zhang Yi touched his chin and looked at it carefully. You mean the snake people use the phalanx to collect power, and then use it to collect it? But how to use it? Can't just break it? That's too dangerous. Lu Kuoran gave Zhang Yi a determined look. Brother, leave this matter to me. I will find a way to release the internal energy. Zhang Yi didn't know what Lu Kuoran was going to do. However, the military has already developed the technology for storing energy, and Zhang Yi's gun has such a device. Okay, but this thing may be very dangerous. I will help you. According to Zhang Yi's estimation, the energy contained in it must be very terrible. If it explodes here by mistake, the entire shelter may be destroyed. Lu Kuoran is of course happy for Zhang Yi to help. Zhang Yi said, but this matter will be done later. Let's deal with other things first. There are many vacant houses next to Lu Kuoran's studio. On weekdays, she will take out a few of them as warehouses to store her materials. Zhang Yi opened a huge room and released a large amount of yuan ore directly. I collected a lot of yuan ore this time. You can study how to use this thing. In short, I will leave all the mechanical matters to you. You can do it as you see fit. Lu Karen nodded. This is easy. I have studied yuanshi fragments before, and I know how to extract energy from them. Zhang Yi smiled and said, don't worry, study it slowly later. There are still some things for you. Zhang Yi took Lu Karen to the living room and called everyone over. Then he opened the alien space, took out the body of a centipede, and threw it on the ground. This is only a centipede more than 5 meters long, but it is still very visually impactful when placed in the living room. At this time, everyone was still frightened by this ugly underground creature. Yang Xia patted her plump chest and said angrily, Zhang Yi, why did you take this thing out? Zhang Yi smiled and said, study it and see if it can be used to cook 2 dishes. Yang Xia rolled her eyes directly. The shell of this thing is too hard. Bullets can't penetrate it. How can I eat it? Zhang Yi sat on the sofa and smiled, no kidding. This thing swallowed a lot of yuanshi veins. It is different from humans and can directly swallow energy bodies. To be honest, I have an idea. As soon as these words came out, the smart Yang Xinxin immediately thought of Zhang Yi's plan. Brother, do you want to feed this kind of insects? Just like raising pigs. Everyone showed puzzled expressions. What's the point of raising this thing? Yang Xinxin pointed at the dead centipede on the ground. It's like we eat mutton. Sheep eat grass and we eat sheep. But humans can't eat grass directly, so we need to add a layer to the food chain. The appearance of sheep fills the loophole that humans can't eat grass directly. And if the aliens want to increase their strength, they basically need to devour the essence of aliens or alien beasts. But they can't directly get it from fossil fuels, or we can obtain power from food and transform it. At this point, everyone gradually understood. Zhou Ke's eyes lit up immediately. She looked at the corpse of the centipede in front of her and said excitedly, in other words, we can feed the centipede to make it stronger. Then harvest its essence and strengthen ourselves, right? As long as we have enough yuanshi, we can continuously harvest the essence of the centipede. Her excited voice began to tremble. We can even cultivate a powerful army of aliens. Zhang Yi smiled and nodded. He crossed his hands under his chin and said leisurely, this is what Qinling district does. Otherwise, why do you think their number of aliens has exploded? When these words came out, everyone suddenly understood. Zhou Ke nodded gently. This incident also solved the confusion in her heart. Superpowers are also a kind of energy. People will become stronger when they eat food. They will feel warm when they use coal to burn fire. Energy will not be born or disappear, it will only be transferred. So, why can't we find a way to convert other energies into superpowers? There must be some way, but Zhoukur didn't find it in the past. The appearance of the centipede made up for this. Of course, Zhang Yi continued, the higher the level, the lower the energy conversion rate. To obtain an Epsilon-level centipede, 80% of it must rely on some special substances, such as the source of God, or something in the underground world. But if you raise this kind of thing, it won't be so difficult for you and the aliens I selected in Tianhai City to grow quickly to the captain level. The corners of Zhang Yi's mouth curled up slightly. The discovery of the centipede was also a huge gain for him, which may be no less than getting the yuan mine. Chapter 1230, 6 Music Exchange. Zhang Yi showed everyone the eggs he had obtained from the centipede nest. Many of the eggs laid by the mother insect were not hatched, and Zhang Yi collected them together. At present, he has less than 1,000 eggs, which is enough to build a huge centipede breeding farm. In addition, Zhang Yi also has a large number of centipede corpses. Among them, those above the captain level can be directly used by their families. The corpses of low-level centipedes are left as food for the new centipedes. Anyway, these low-level creatures have no wisdom. They can even gnaw on stones. When they are hungry, they can naturally eat their own blood relatives. Zhang Yi's idea is very perfect. He said, as long as a perfect industrial chain is established, we will be able to have a steady stream of high-level aliens in the future. He smiled and snapped his fingers. Of course, this is only a theoretical possibility. So far, we have to conduct experiments first and improve your strength. As for others, that will be a matter for the future. It is not easy to complete this plan. No one has cultivated centipedes before, and everything can only be done by trial and error. And the risks of raising such a ferocious beast must also be considered. After discussing, everyone decided to build a strong breeding farm under the shelter. The hatching was left to Zhoukur, who had the highest knowledge in the field of biology. Zhang Yi reached out and touched Huahua, who was lazily lying on the sofa. Huahua, when you are free, you'll be responsible for being an administrator. If you encounter a disobedient centipede, just eat it. Meows. Huahua lazily opened her mouth and agreed to this matter. Afterwards, Zhang Yi also distributed the centipede essence he had obtained to everyone. He kept a part of it himself, but not much, because now the Delta-level essence is no longer of much value to him. However, Zhang Yi is confident that after absorbing the essence of these centipedes, the overall strength of the shelter will be greatly improved. His goal is to at least promote everyone to the captain level. Only in this way, when encountering similar actions in the future, they will have the ability to protect themselves. Everyone excitedly received their own portion of the alien beast essence and went back to absorb it. After Fatty Su came back, he was always in a trance, looking absent-minded. Zhang Yi took out a captain-level centipede core and handed it to him, patted his shoulder, and said, "Don't think too much, absorb it well, and improve your strength. The world is so big, you will meet many beautiful girls in the future. There will always be one suitable for you." Fatty Su then looked down at the exotic beast core brought by Zhang Yi, which was a vibrant heart. "Boss, can this thing make me as strong as hers?" Fatty Su asked Zhang Yi eagerly. The she he was talking about was naturally Liang Yang. Even though he knew that she was a little boy's mother, Fatty Su still couldn't let it go completely. Zhang Yi patted his chest and said confidently, "Take it and absorb it well, and then spend some time to train yourself. After that, your ability index will not be lower than 9,000 points. If it is lower than 9,000 points, you can come to Brother E and Brother E will replenish it for you." I love to tell the truth. Fatty Su's eyes lit up, and he reached out to take the alien beast core. "Boss, I feel relieved with your words. Hee, if I can't catch up with Yang Yang by then, you have to replenish it for me." Zhang Yi curled his lips and rolled his eyes in his heart. "I'll replenish your eggs." Fatty Su left happily. Zhang Yi glanced at the heavy snow outside the window, changed his clothes, and walked out of the house. He came to the edge of Lujiang River, walked on the hard ice, and then reached out and knocked on the ice hard. Dong dong dong. The sound was not loud, but not long after, a piece of ice cracked with a click. Then a big round head came out from under the ice. The frog's eyes rolled around, and there was some confusion from just waking up. But after seeing Zhang Yi clearly, he laughed happily.
Wow.
Zhang Yi, my friend. You're back. I just closed my eyes and woke up to see you.
I'm really happy.
Hey, how long have you been away this time? Zhang Yi smiled and said, about half a month. He stretched his hand behind him. Would you like to come with me for a cup of hot coffee? The frog came out from under the ice with a pop sound and jumped in front of Zhang Yi. Of course, I'd love to. The frog followed Zhang Yi to the shelter. He carefully shook off the ice chips on his body outside. The big chinchilla was lying in front of the fireplace with a big belly. Seeing the frog coming, it was also very happy and opened its mouth to make a ong-ong sound. The sound was very strange, a bit like a cow's cry, and a bit like the whine of an old lathe when it was started. Hey, my friend. Long time no see. The frog smiled and greeted it. Zhang Yi poured a cup of hot coffee for the frog. It elegantly pinched the handle of the cup and drank the coffee in one gulp. Compared to its huge mouth, the coffee cup looked small and cute. After drinking, the frog came to the big chinchilla and took out the coffee from its fat belly. He took out a recorder from the folds. He talked a lot to the big chinchilla and then pointed at the recorder in his hand. The big chinchilla obviously didn't understand what he was saying, but he still understood what he meant. The frog and the big chinchilla started playing a familiar performance, one with a recorder and the other with a strangely shaped flute. Zhang Yi lay on the sofa, with his legs on the other end of the sofa, watching the TV program leisurely. Next, he waited for news from Liu Karen. He was full of expectations for the mysterious purple crystal. Zhang Yi watched TV and fell asleep unknowingly. When he woke up and opened his eyes, he saw two pairs of big round eyes staring at him above his head. Zhang Yi was startled, and when he looked carefully, he found that it was the frog and the big chinchilla, so he breathed a sigh of relief. He had an instinctive sense of danger, and even in his sleep, it was difficult for anyone to approach him quietly. Unless the other party had no ill will towards him, it would not arouse Zhang Yi's vigilance. Hey, why don't you two play anymore?
Quack.
The big chinchilla has something to tell you. The frog danced and said excitedly. Zhang Yi was surprised. It has something to tell me? The big chinchilla looked naive and chubby, which was very pleasing. However, Zhang Yi and his friend still didn't know what species it was. Now, Zhang Yi had a guess in his mind. Maybe it was not a mutated creature on land, but a species from the underground world. Dear viewers, thanks for staying tuned. This video ends here. More videos will come soon. Please help us by subscribing the channel.